Greetings, and welcome to So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles, and it's always a pleasure to share facts and viewpoints on the world of sports, as well as interview outstanding guests. Before I introduce this distinguished gentleman, please make sure to check out past episodes and interviews on So Much to Talk About on my YouTube channel, which is N as in No, S as in Sam, I as in Indigo, NSI World, so you can be able to see all of the great guests that I've been able to feature and all the great insight they provided. And also make sure to check out my podcast, which is called Where They At, in which I feature Hall of Fame caliber retired athletes, as well as on occasion, iconic creative artists as well. So you can check that podcast out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, et cetera, to be able to hear those episodes as well. So now, without further ado, I want to introduce this gentleman who was part of the rich history of Duke men's basketball as part of the 1986 team that made the NCAA Championship Game and the class that saved Coach K, referring to Hall of Fame coach Mike Krzyzewski. We're going to talk about how that came about, how the class saved Coach K and how he saved them as well. And he was an assistant coach under Coach K, winning 2 national championships in 1991 and 1992, and simultaneously obtaining his Juris Degree from Duke Law School. And he has been a college basketball analyst for ESPN since 1995, becoming the most prolific and credible expert of NCAA basketball. He's a 6-time Emmy Award nominee, and I'm looking forward to have so much to talk about with this gentleman for the second time, because he came on the show way back in 2008, and he's always been such a wonderful, gracious individual with me throughout the years. It is my pleasure to introduce the one and only Mr. Jay Bilas on SMTA. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Nabaté. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jay. Thank you for asking, and thank you for being on. It's always an honor and a privilege to converse with you on many different topics. And wow, this topic that is big time news, probably the biggest news in 2021 when it comes to athletics, especially amateur athletics, but a ruling that is long overdue. NCAA student athletes will be compensated for their name, image, and likeness finally. And I'm wondering, is this too good to be true? And are there some elements in between the lines that student athletes will need to look out for?
Well, there's always things you need to look out for, but what's too good to be true is perhaps the fact that rather than being at a finish line, the athletes are barely at the starting point, starting blocks. They should be allowed full economic rights in the marketplace, not just, hey, you can have your NIL rights with certain guardrails and restrictions. Everybody else has full rights. Every other student, every other person, they can operate in the marketplace without restriction. And the Supreme Court ruling that recently came down in Alston indicated that the NCAA has been violating federal antitrust law for its entire history. And I don't think it's going to take long for more cases to come down the pike with regard to not only NIL, that would remove guardrails, but also pay for play, where the schools can start paying the players. I think that's coming in the future if Congress doesn't step in, if the NCAA can't convince Congress to give them some sort of safe harbor from federal antitrust law so they can continue to violate the law going forward.
Wow. No, that's a whole... These things are certainly going to come up for sure in the next coming months. And wow, now is it possible for the NCAA to go back and reverse all of the sanctions versus Reggie Bush, the Fab Five, like giving Reggie Bush back this Heisman and being able to put the records of the Fab Five and Reggie Bush, et cetera, et cetera? Will the NCAA do that? We know they should, but will they?
Yeah, I think they should. They don't have to, because it's, there is nobody's questioning that rules were violated. My point is that the rules were improper, and frankly, the rules were illegal. And that's been found by the United States Supreme Court. So my point is the NCAA should voluntarily restore all records, and rescind all penalties that had to do with money. That includes Reggie Bush, the Fab Five, the UMass women's tennis team, all kinds of things like that. And it would be more a gesture of goodwill to say that, look, these rules were wrong. We were wrong in doing this, and we should move forward together to a future where there's greater equality and fairness, because it's clear that the rules were not fair, and frankly, the rules were against the law. They violated federal antitrust law, and I don't think the NCAA is going to admit that, but I think they'd go a long way to restoring whatever shred of credibility they may have left if they would do that.
The great Jay Bilas, college basketball analyst for ESPN since 1995, one of the great basketball players in Duke men's basketball history, and also a distinguished lawyer as well here on So Much to Talk About. I'm Nabaté Isles. So Jay, will big-time agents start to visibly recruit high school players now to get them these endorsements?
Not high school players, but I think you'll see that the top players that have value will certainly have agents and lawyers that'll help them navigate the space, just as you would expect if a 16-year-old actor were being recruited to do feature-length motion pictures for millions upon millions of dollars. You would expect them to have an agent or have advice from a lawyer. That's not unusual in our world. And these players, if they are in high school, if they are not yet to the age of 18, they have families that can advise them. I mean, it strains the mind to think that these players can make a decision on where to go to college and be bound by it, but they can't decide whether to hire an agent or whether to have a lawyer or not. They can get their own doctors that help them determine their medical future, but they can't get an agent. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Representative Anthony Gonzalez, he's asking leaders of the House Energy and Commerce Committee to conduct a hearing on college sports NIL, name, image, and likeness, to create a unified system. How extremely vital is it to create that system for all 50 states?
It's not vital at all. In fact, it's not at all necessary. We have 50 different state tax laws, and you don't see people complaining that it gives a tremendous advantage to schools in states with no state income tax, that they can get better employees because they don't have to pay income tax. They'll make far more money if they go to Florida or Texas or Nevada schools than if they went to schools in Connecticut or New York or places like that with higher taxation. So we've got differing state laws with regard to just about everything. Right now, at least, seems to me a bit ridiculous that we're rushing for a federal solution when we haven't done it with regard to anything else. There are no rules. There's no set rules with regard to facility spending, coaches' salaries, media rights deals, anything like that. It's just competition in the marketplace. And if one state thinks that another state has an advantage, then that state can change its laws. It's really pretty simple. I think what we're going to see is, and look, this is all coming from the NCAA, sort of the sky is falling. We need a national standard. Otherwise, we can't have fair competition. That crazy argument. And some people buy it. But, what we'll see, I think, in the next several months is that the sun will keep coming up in the morning. The world will remain firmly on its axis, and business will be done, and it won't be any big deal. And I think I'm hopeful anyway, that'll convince Congress that it's probably not the right thing to wade into this and to have some sort of federal standard that they will likely have to revisit quite often because the market's going to change over the years. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a big fan of that idea, but reasonable minds can differ.
Speaking of state income tax, there are 9 states with no state income tax, and 4 of them have Power 5 conference schools. And those states are Florida, Texas, Washington, and Tennessee. Major advantage for those schools now in recruiting, right?
Well, it was not in recruiting employees and coaches. So if the theory would go that if Nick Saban can make $9 million a year at Alabama and would get the same amount of Florida, he might go to Florida because there's no state income tax. Look how much more money he would retain rather than paying it to the government. That's the argument. You don't see coaches flocking and employees flocking states with no income tax because money is just a factor in people's decisions. It is not the sole factor. And the NCAA is trying to convince us that, boy, once players can make money, that's going to be the sole factor. They're going to flock to where they can make money, not where they can get education, not where they can play, not where it's the best fit, not where they're near family, not where the climate is best for them. It's kind of silly to even make these arguments, but because the players have never been allowed compensation before, the NCAA can make these ridiculous arguments, and some people will buy them because there's no history to it. There's nothing we can point to say, no, that's not the way it works. Like if I make that argument with regard to coaches, people go, no, it's not the way it works, because people aren't doing that. They're not flocking there. But we don't have that history with athletes because they've never been allowed it. And it's kind of like if you don't allow people to vote, they'll say, well, people aren't going to vote anyway. Well, how do we know that? We've never allowed them to vote. Things as ridiculous as that. So it's the same kind of stupid argument that people make that, they're allowed money now, all the best players are going to go here, and it's just not true.
Now we're going to move on to the 2021 NBA draft. Another draft is upon us. It will take place July 29th at the Barclays Center. And this is a very interesting draft because it is the first one to feature players involved in G League Ignite. And two lottery picks, especially Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga, definitely benefited from this experience. And now wanted to ask you, will the players involved in G League Ignite have an advantage as far as adapting to the NBA game in the fact that they receive professional coaching throughout the year? Will they have that advantage over collegiate athletes?
Maybe at first, but I don't think that's a big factor. I think for young players, where they wind up going out of high school, if it's to the G League Ignite, if it's to go overseas, or if it's to go to college, or you name it, maybe if they opened up the NBA to go straight into the NBA, whatever it may be, it's just a question of where you want to develop. And you can develop, even though we're used to players going to college, seeing them develop before our eyes, players can develop really quickly in the G League and arguably faster because they don't have any restrictions on their time. And they're working with only NBA people, NBA systems. So could it be an early advantage? Yeah, but I don't see it being a problem for college players to quote unquote catch up, if you will. I don't think it's that big of a deal. So, it's likely that Cade Cunningham will be the number one pick, but Jalen Green is right there. He was the number one player in high school over Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley when they were all three seniors in high school. So this is an extraordinarily deep draft. So we're going to see a lot of quality players come out of it. It's just a question right now about the order.
Okay. And Jay, now, whose stock right now is bullish right now, and whose stock is bearish? So if you name a couple of players in those categories of stock that has gone up, especially with the scouting combine just completed.
Yeah, I don't know so much about the bearish part, but the guys that have been doing a really good job, Bones Highland at the combine did a great job for VCU. He only played one day, but I thought did a very, very nice job. And I was really impressed those 2 days with Jericho Sims. I mean, I don't think he's not going to be a first round pick, but I think moved himself up into the realm of being drafted. And I think he's an NBA player because of his athleticism, his ability to rebound, go get the ball. He dunks to everything around the basket. But those guys are I think Highland probably moved himself up into being a first round selection. At least that's the way I view it. But those are different than the top guys. That's a pretty set group, and I don't think we're seeing any any rising and falling or bull or bear stuff out of those guys. I think this draft is pretty clear. People may have differing opinions. I like this guy better than that guy, but I don't think we're going to see a ton of volatility as far as where people are picked versus where they're projected.
Okay. Well, and I wanted to ask you, which player can come in? It depends on the team that drafts them, obviously, but which player can come in and be able to make an immediate impact from the standpoint of both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively?
Well, I mean, I think Cunningham can do that. He's ready to come in and play right away. All these, a lot of these guys at the top, there may be bumps in the road, but they're ready to go. One of the guys that I think is probably undervalued is Davion Mitchell out of Baylor.
That's right.
I see him being a top top 6 pick, maybe. I mean, we're going to see more freshmen drafted, or players with only 1 year out of high school drafted this year than ever. I mean, I think the record is 18, and that'll be obliterated. It'll be way more than that.
Players in mid majors that really impressed you that are not a part of the Power Five, or even like in a conference and that's a lower end conference in D1, like which players really impressed you that you've seen?
Well, Highland would be the first one. Bones Highland from VCU. I watched him play in college, and I really liked him, but he was way better than I expected at the combine. And I was disappointed he shut it down after the first day, but he was really, really impressive. And it just shows there's so many good players out there. There are going to be a bunch of players this year that don't get drafted that are going to make NBA teams. That's how deep the draft is, and that's a nice thing. I think it shows that while people talk about, well, the players in Europe are more skilled and all that, I've never thought that was true. But the players, the players that are being developed in the United States are really good, and it's fun to win at such a young age to be so skilled and so advanced at the age they are. It's really impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive, because I mean, now all these kids, like, it's not like the NBA anymore when you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now it's interchangeable. Kids are playing, like you have fives that can step out and everything and defend the perimeter.
Yes. Yeah, that's happening now. And I think just coaches have done a really good job of developing players, and they play more than they ever did. So that's been fun to watch.
Here with Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst, as well as distinguished attorney and one of the great players to come out of Duke men's basketball, here on So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles. So, Jay, speaking of Duke men's basketball, Coach Mike Krzyzewski will be retiring after the 2021-22 season. And I know he's meant a lot to you and many other student athletes that have come out of the Duke University program. And Coach K, I had the honor to interview him at the preseason NIT press conference back in 2013. And he talked about totem pole, but not vertical, horizontal. How horizontal totem pole shows that every player has equal value. It can be the first man to the 12th man. Jay, talk about how that concept and other concepts that Coach K instilled in all of you, how has really helped you become a great team player in what you've done in life as a lawyer and as a broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about, everybody has a role, and every role's equally important. Sort of the idea about what's the most important part of a car. I mean, the car won't drive without the engine or the tires or the steering wheel, but it won't drive with only those things, and or only one of those things. So you're not more important than the greater whole. So your responsibilities are vital. But the whole is the most important. He used to call it being part of something bigger than yourself. But that's team, that's family, that's military, you name it. Just being a great teammate. He spent a lot of time talking about that.
Well, how much pressure was on Coach K when you came in? Because, he replaced Bill Foster, who was a legend and everything. And I think Coach K's record was 35-47, I believe, his first 3 years, around that mark. So how much pressure did you and Johnny Dawkins and all you guys saw that was resonating on Coach K externally?
We were aware of it. It was just sort of this cloud that was hanging over the program. So it wasn't an everyday thing. It wasn't something we talked about every day, but you felt the pressure that we had to turn it around, not just for him. I mean, we wanted to win for us, but we knew, he was the guy that brought us in, and he had some difficulties, record wise, and he was getting criticized, and we didn't care for that. So it was difficult, a difficult period at first, but after getting through that initial part, our second, third, fourth years were, nationally ranked, all that stuff. Things not only stabilized, but they got really good, and then all that, sort of the cloud went away, and all the people who were naysayers were on the bandwagon. So that was kind of a nice thing.
Wow, no doubt about that. And Jay, what's the best advice Coach K has ever given you? A slogan that resonates to you? I'm sure there's been many slogans and many great messages that he's conveyed to you, but which one right now stands out?
Probably he talked a lot about next play. You have to move on to the next play, whatever happens, whether it's positive or negative. I think golfers call it staying in the moment. It's concentrating on what's in front of you. That what's already happened, you can't do anything about it. There's no sense worrying too much about what's going to happen in the future. You need to concentrate on what's right in front of you right now, so you can make this play, and then as soon as that play's over, move on to the next one. So it's more of a mental trigger than anything. So I say it to myself quite a bit.
Well, that's what's all about. That's what life is about for sure. Like being in that present moment for sure. The power of now. And Coach Mike Krzyzewski, I can't believe that. Wow, how time flies. He's retiring after, I believe, 41 years, right, Jay? 41 years coaching at Duke.
Yeah, he's going to be 75 years old in February, so I think it's 41.
Whew.
That's a long time. I mean, for guys, while we're all talking about, sort of the end, and I'm glad we get another year with him, to be able to sort of celebrate him, and his career. There is at some point, like I've probably the last 5 years or so, maybe longer. The first question I get about Coach K is, how much longer is he going to go? And so that there is a time for all of us to step away from what we're doing, and so this is time for him, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. It's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had great coaches that have stepped away. Bear Bryant at Alabama, John Wooden at UCLA. I mean, I name a whole bunch. Dean Smith at North Carolina, then Roy Williams just this last year. It's happened before. It's gonna, obviously it's happening now, and it's gonna happen in the future. That's the nature of things.
Yeah.
So the like, kind of like we were saying about next play, it's next play in this too. You have to, and that's why you want to enjoy what you have while you have it, and not take it for granted, because it's not going to be there forever. And this is going to be the last year, and then it's going to be next play for Duke. They're going to have to, John Shire is going to take over, and they're going to move on.
And speaking of John Shire, now don't get me wrong, he's a good choice and everything, but are you surprised that Duke didn't maybe reach out to a Bobby Hurley, Johnny Dawkins, Steve Wojciechowski, even Quinn Snyder, who has major NBA experience? So, like, are you surprised that they made the decision quickly?
It's a difficult situation to be in. One, John is a great coach and a great prospect, and he'll do a great job. But it was going to have to be somebody sitting next to Coach K. He's got another year, so if you're going to have continuity, you're going to have to name somebody there. So it logistically, it would be, how would you do it? You'd have to get somebody to quit their job and come back and wait for a year. So that's an awfully difficult logistical challenge. So I don't know, all the factors that went into it, but with this sort of timetable, it's awfully difficult to conduct a search.
Wow, no, it's deep, but hey, just the lineage of what Coach K has blessed basketball with has been unbelievable. And I wanted to ask you about Kwame Brown. You heard about Kwame Brown's, just lashing out, all of the strife that he's received and the criticism received, and he's really lashed out. What is your take on his situation and what he's saying and how he's speaking out against those, just media in general?
Kwame Brown came into the NBA at a very difficult time when I'm not sure all of us had wrapped our heads around high school players going into the pros, and scouting and all that's an inexact science, period. But Kwame Brown had a good career. Like, he was a good player. The problem is when you're the number one pick, being good isn't good enough. And you're going to get criticized if you're not Hall of Fame, or if you're going to be called a bust and all those things. And he took a lot of heat. Michael Jordan took a lot of heat for drafting him. Some of it fair. Like, criticism isn't always unfair or unwarranted. But it sounds like a lot of it was unfair, and it could be hurtful and affect people in a negative way. And so what you hope is that the criticism can be reasonable and in the right tone, so that it's not, it's not, as you use the term, disparaging. You don't want to ever disparage people. You might be critical and have something negative to say, but that to me is different than disparaging someone and going after their character. Sometimes you can talk about people's character and have it be reasonable. But what I'm hopeful of is that Kwame is okay and in a good place. But your point about the media, one thing that I have found, with the media, and I think most of us are pretty good with this, but we feel like we get to say whatever we want, but our subjects get to say whatever they want too. And if they're critical of us, we have to sit back and take it and listen to it and evaluate it the same way we expect people to evaluate our comments. So I'm all for Kwame saying whatever he wants and getting his viewpoints out there in the marketplace of ideas. He should do that. Now we can discuss whether he's right, wrong, all that stuff, but the idea of whether one of our subjects should fire back, I have zero problem with that. I'm fine with it.
No, that's deep, Jay. And a couple more questions for you before I let you go. Thank you for being on so much to talk about. The great Jay Bilas, college basketball analyst for ESPN, one of the great Duke players of all time and distinguished attorney as well. Now, Jay, what has been significant on your playlist the first half of 2021? Because I know you're a jazz fan. You raved about the great Paul Jeffrey, his jazz history classes and everything like that. And I know you love music in general. So what's on your playlist?
I've been wearing out on Spotify this playlist I made of just like older songs. Like, so I've had a little, I've been a little Biggie on there.
Okay.
For some reason, Hypnotize has been high on the list.
Oh, yep. And that's from Rise, Herb Albert. Yep.
It's been kind of fun. And I'm a big Rolling Stones fan. So I put a lot of Stones on there, a lot of Van Morrison. So it goes back and forth.
Yes. Wow. Ooh. So now I'm a trumpet player. I'm a jazz trumpet player, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your favorite jazz trumpeter?
My favorite jazz trumpeter would probably be Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd have to going back to Paul Jeffries and the intro to jazz stuff we took when he introduced us to Charles Mingus and Charlie Parker and all these different tremendous jazz musicians. Mm-hmm. Miles Davis would still be on the top of the trumpet list, wouldn't he?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. And being an innovator, like a band leader, and he's like, they call the University of Miles Davis University because of all the great artists that have come out of his band.
Now I'm not trying to say I'm sitting listening to jazz all the time. Paul Jeffries gave me a tremendous appreciation for it. But there's very little Miles Davis on my playlist. Maybe I ought to change that. I don't have Bird on there. I don't have Charles Mingus. So I gotta get it together.
Okay, don't worry. I'll send you some recommendations, after the show.
Okay,
for sure.
I'll take them.
And yes, indeed. So what's next for Jay Bilas? What do you have going on? I know you had your camp last month. I wish I had you early. I would have definitely promoted. But what else you have going on, now?
Well, just the draft coming up. So, trying to get as much family time as I can. And then the draft is July 29th on ESPN. We've also got the draft on ABC at the same time. So we're getting like football. We'll have two broadcasts of the same draft, but it'll be fun. So that's the next thing. And then just trying to keep an eye on recruiting and trying to figure out where everybody's going to be next year, where they're going to, stay in the NBA draft, come back to college, what guys are going to the G League, all that stuff. Just trying to keep up with the comings and goings of the best players.
Wow. And one more question before I let you go. Gonzaga, my goodness, like how they've developed into a true power. I mean, wow, this team, is this the best Gonzaga team coming up, in the 2021-22 season? Is this the best team coming up? Can this team be even better than last year's team?
It's hard to say they can't do it because they've done just about everything you expect a team to do. But, Gonzaga has done an amazing job to go from, little engine that could mid-major to being one of the big players in the game because they've invested in it. I mean, it's not just been, they have a great coach and a great system and all that. They've poured a lot of money into their program and it's paid off because they've made a lot of money from it, and they've been a launching pad for a lot of great players. So it's been fun to watch. I still think their accomplishments won't be truly appreciated by the masses until they win it. Mm-hmm. And when they do, and I think it's when, not if, but when they do, I think people, it'll really spotlight all the tremendous accomplishments they've had over the last 20 years.
Well, no question. And that was that game against UCLA. My goodness, Jay. That was
pretty good, wasn't
it? Yes, it was. Wow. Well, Jay, I want to thank you so much for being on So Much to Talk About once again. I always appreciate your support, your graciousness, and your professionalism overall, like throughout the years. Thank you so much for being on SMTA.
Great to be with you, Nabaté. Thank you for having me.
And I appreciate you, Jay. And I appreciate all of you for watching So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles. Have a wonderful night. Be blessed and make sure to treat each other with respect and kindness. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.